Three MiG-31s ripped into NATO airspace before dawn, confident in speed and altitude. Cockpit lights flicked from calm green to violent red in an instant. Alarms screamed, and radios flooded with frantic static and clipped useless calls. What they thought was a routine provocation became a carefully set trap. Screens that once promised dominance now fed panic and unreadable ghosts. For 12 minutes, the pilots watched their advantage melt into a networked noose. They did not fire a single shot. They fled instead, humiliated, outplayed, and exposed. It started hours earlier at Chkalovsk Air Base. Three MiG-31 Foxhounds roared up through low clouds, climbing fast, leveling out near 45,000 feet. They weren't sneaking in. They wanted to be seen. Their transponders were off, and formation was wide and deliberate. Their flight path angled directly toward Estonian airspace like a taunt. To them, this was a performance, or maybe a controlled violation, something Moscow called pressure messaging, and NATO usually answered with polite escorts. The Russian pilots expected the same script as every other time. NATO scrambles two F-16, and then radio warnings are exchanged. Finally, everyone flies home, and the political theater is complete. And that's why they flew low for a MiG-31. They wanted to be intercepted because they were hunting a headline. What they didn't know was that NATO had already thrown out the old playbook. This time, no one was coming to escort them. Instead, someone was waiting to study them. From the moment those MiG-31s lifted off, NATO's Combined Air Operations Center in Germany tagged them as priority targets. The order that went out was unnervingly calm. Do not scramble. Let them enter our airspace. This was not hesitation, but a hunt, a patient one. NATO wanted the MiGs to cross the line themselves, willingly, confidently, blind to what waited. So the screens in the operations room stayed cold. No alarms, no emergency takeoff orders, and absolutely nothing to suggest the trap had already closed. Meanwhile, Russian pilots joked on open comms. They mistook silence for weakness and patience for fear. Every extra mile they flew into Estonian airspace worsened the outcome. NATO was mapping and preparing the kill box. The MiG-31 pilots were congratulating themselves on spooking NATO. On the spectrum of the sphere, 80 kilometers to the southwest, two Italian F-35A Lightning IIs had slipped into the air hours earlier. They were flying low, cold, and invisible. Their APG-81 radars ran in low probability of intercept mode, reading the MiGs in full detail without ever announcing themselves. The MiGs were flying with their guts exposed and didn't know that every signal they emitted was being swallowed, cleaned, labeled, and streamed to an AWACS orbiting far beyond their awareness. AWACS fed that picture into the wider network, including Sweden, Estonia, Poland, and Germany. Everyone was watching the same three dots. Then another pair moved into position. Those were two JAS-39E Gripens, flying parallel, radars off and weapons live. They were built for this exact enemy. Their sensors didn't need to be on. The Russian pilots were still laughing into the radio. They thought nothing was happening. Now tell us in the comments, do you think it was confidence or delusion? It happened all at once. The MiG-31 cockpits, calm seconds before, erupted into noise. Their Zaslon M radars went blind. Screens flooded with phantom contacts and impossible returns. Then, unexpectedly, the radios died. Every frequency crushed at once. The MiGs were now flying at 45,000 feet, blind, deaf, and alone. And only then did the threat warning receivers start screaming. A lock, then another, and then all three aircraft, painted simultaneously. The Russian pilots craned their heads and finally saw them. Two Gripen Es rising through the haze like hunters, their wingtips carrying Meteor missiles already warmed and waiting. It was a cold, perfect firing solution. The Meteor isn't a missile you evade. It doesn't bleed speed, nor does it lose energy. It hunts at Mach 4+ until the target stops moving. By the time the MiG pilots visually recognized what they were facing, they were already inside the no-escape zone. If you were in that cockpit, would you fight blind or turn and run? The Gripens didn't fire. They didn't need to. They moved alongside the MiG-31s at matching altitude and speed, a controlled escort with missile locks already confirmed. Then a single transmission cut through the shared emergency channel. Russian aircraft. Your radars are compromised. Multiple missiles are locked. Return to Russian airspace immediately. This is an order. The Russian pilots tried contacting ground control. The reply they received was short and urgent. Turn back. Immediately, there was no debate left after that. The 3 MiG-31s broke formation and reversed course, heading east at speed, under escort. The Gripens stayed with them until the border was crossed. The F-35s continued recording the entire withdrawal for intelligence review. No missiles were launched, nor did any dogfight occur. Even there were no heroic last maneuvers. Everything ended with one side realizing it had already lost before it understood the engagement had started. When the MiG-31s landed, the mission report didn't describe a routine border pressure run. Instead, it briefed an aircraft caught, mapped, tracked, jammed, and forced to retreat without resistance. NATO blocked an intrusion. Moreover, it demonstrated that the MiG-31's main advantages, speed, altitude, and radar power, could be neutralized by a networked force operating as a single system. The lesson was worth remembering. Number 1, a fast aircraft is useless when it is blind. Number 2, high altitude is meaningless when missile guidance isn't yours. And number 3, power does not matter if the network owns the engagement picture. This incident reached command tables in Moscow before dawn. The conclusion was pretty predictable. Future violations of NATO airspace now carry a genuine risk of loss, not only embarrassment. NATO states then met behind closed doors. The long-standing escort the intruder out policy was suspended, and a new engagement protocol was signed. The next deliberate violation can be met with a live kill. It won't need any warning, escort, or theatrics. The cost of testing the border just changed. The MiG-31 was never designed for a fight like this. Its strength was built for another era, one where combat meant racing straight lines at impossible altitude to intercept heavy bombers. At Mach 2.8 and 80,000 feet, the MiG-31 is fast, but speed comes with a price. There, the air is thin, and the aircraft can't turn without risking a stall or structural failure. In those conditions, the pilot cannot bank hard, dive aggressively, or bleed speed to survive a missile approach. Against a ramjet Meteor, that's fatal. Instead of slowing down during pursuit, the Meteor accelerates in the final phase. So the MiG-31 pilot has zero escape window with no corner velocity, G-load maneuver, and altitude trick to break lock. The aircraft's own performance envelope traps it, and speed creates heat. At high velocity, the MiG-31 glows in infrared like a flare against a cold sky. To the F-35's optical tracking systems, that signal is visible from hundreds of kilometers away. There is no stealth or hiding. The faster the MiG runs, the easier it is to find, track, classify, and engage. The aircraft's final vulnerability was electronic. Its radar and warning receivers belong to a generation where each jet fights as an individual platform. Modern combat does not work like that anymore. The Gripens and F-35s were not two aircraft and two aircraft. They were a single system, sharing one battlespace picture in real time. So you see, the MiG-31 was beaten in architecture. It was built for speed, while the battle was built for information. At the end of the day, speed lost the battle. Now, what do you think? If a weapons design philosophy is outdated, does upgrading it save it? Or is retirement the only future? Let us know in the comments. The MiG-31s crossed the border and disappeared back into Russian airspace, but the damage landed with them. Hangars went quiet, and debrief rooms stayed cold. No pilot in that formation walked in feeling victorious. NATO proved that altitude is not control, and networks win over noise. Now that the rules are different, can you guess if Russia tests the border again? Does NATO pull the trigger? Share this with someone who has got a bloody nose and subscribe if you haven't already. The next story is already unfolding.